For decades, players have been playing poker robots online, and viruses sent by hackers have always been a problem. But in 2019, the poker world would change forever when a company near a fish market in Wuhan, China, gave birth to the first poker robot. The game offers the player 6 5-card community groups. Because the center group is affected by a virus emitted by this robot. Not only do you have to beat the robot, but your winning hand must consist of at least one of 5 center cards in the middle of the virus. To make things worse, Mr. Robot is going to mutate the center cards in the middle of the game. Even though the player will know his hole cards as they are being dealt, Robot does not know the player's hole cards, but he knows everything else. We'll play a short version of the game first. Player and Robot ante up. Then the hole cards are dealt. Even though the hole cards are face down, a player can see his cards in the lower left corner. Then the 5 center cards are dealt face down. Oh, and you know it, here comes the virus. The next 4 community cards are dealt simultaneously outside the cell. The player then selects his group, and each eligible group is indicated on the screen. The player selects group number 3. And now his hole cards are moved next to his 2 face-up cards in this group, giving him 7 cards in a line to make the best 5-card poker hand. Robot must take the 2 remaining outside community cards for his group, which means he has group 1, and will move his 2 hole cards over adjacent in his group. So in theory, the player is not only selecting his group, but that of the dealer as well. Now the player can initiate a round of betting. Next, the 4 cards surrounding the center card are exposed. Here's where Robot mutates the virus containing those 5 community cards. He can move the 4 cards surrounding the center card clockwise or counterclockwise, 1 card. So here he gets a chance to select his other 2 community cards, and at the same time, he can mess up the player's hand. Smart move! He did a clockwise rotation to move the 2 kings to his group. Now the player can initiate another round of betting, if he so chooses. Finally, the center river card is exposed. The player can initiate another round of betting, or he can just hit showdown. And keep in mind, the player can fold whenever he likes. Now the showdown. The player has 2 pairs, jacks and 4s. And the Robot also has 2 pairs. But he has a higher ranking hand, kings and 6s. Now we'll play the longer 2-1-1 version of the game. The player and Robot ante up and are dealt their 2 hole cards. And again, the 5 center community cards are dealt face down. You guessed it, the virus was sent by the Robat again. This time, only 2 cards are dealt outside the virus, randomly to any 2 spots. This creates group number 3. The player passes on this group, and he cannot go back and take it later. The next outside card is dealt randomly, creating group number 4 and group down. Again, the player passes on these 2 groups, waiting on the last community card to be dealt. The last community card produces groups 1 and 2 and across, and the player selects group across. He has a jack in the hole, so it might be a smart move. In reality, he chooses group down for the dealer. Robat has to use the other 2 outside community cards, which designates him as group down. Meanwhile, the player's 2 hole cards are moved up next to his outside group cards. Same for Robat. Now the betting round and the community cards surrounding the center card are now exposed. Robat once again mutates the cell, this time counterclockwise to get his kings lined up in the group down. And now the player can do a round of betting, despite knowing that the Robat has his 2 jacks beat on the table. The river card is now exposed, and our player is pleasantly surprised while trying to keep his poker face. He can start the final round of betting before the showdown. Showdown. Robat exposes his hole cards to show 2 pairs, kings and 4s. Not so fast, my friend. The player has trips and the chips, and the player's hand does qualify, as one of his jacks is inside the virus. The jack in the virus gets blown away, opening a hole for the virus to be destructed. And that is how you beat Robat.